Hello everybody. Through the years I have documented several trips to Big Bend and Arkansas and other places, Colorado, but I discovered that I had not documented on video, on a digital DVD, our trip to Big Bend in 1987 with Bobby and Luke Gillum, Bill and Kevin Golson, Nathan and Cecil Self. Did not have a movie camera at that time, but I did have a 35 millimeter, and Nathan and I took almost 90 pictures that turned out pretty good, and so I wanted to put them on a DVD and do a little bit of narration to explain some of the places we are and the things we're seeing and the fun we're having. Unfortunately, we had a little 110 camera and took about dozen or two or three dozen pictures, and none of them turned out on that little 110 camera, but the 35 millimeters turned out fairly well. Anyway, this is about our trip in 1987 to Big Bend. This is a scene of a booklet and the sun rising over the Chisos Mountains and the Rio Grande River in the foreground. Going to call this our fathers and sons Big Bend trip, bike trip. It was in March of 1987 during the boys' spring break. We rode our motorcycles to Big Bend, left out on a Saturday, and I and Nathan made it back to Waco Tuesday afternoon, but Bobby and Bill and the boys stretched it out a little longer, wound up going all the way to Mustang Island on Padre Island area, Corpus Christi area, and didn't get back in till Friday, I think. So anyway, the riders were Bobby and Luke Gillum, Bill and Kevin Golson, Cecil and Nathan Self. I want to try to give you an idea of the route we took. We started from Waco, met up at the Whataburger over on the west side of town on Loop 340, Highway 84, about 6:30 or so, and then we rode west on 84 through Gatesville, Event, Goldthwaite, stopped and ate breakfast at Goldthwaite, and then went on down Highway 16 to San Saba and went west out to Brady, followed 190 out to Menard, El Dorado, Ira Ann, stopped and ate lunch at Scenic Overlook Roadside Park west of Ira Ann, and went on down and caught I-10 and rode Interstate 10 all the way out to Fort Stockton. Stopped and got some light bulbs and stuff there. Went on out to Balmorhea, stopped for a little snack, and then checked out the creek there and stuff coming through town. That was spring water flowing out of Lake Balmorhea, or the Balmorhea State Park there. Then we rode Highway 17 on up into the mountains to Fort Davis, and went to the Fort Davis State Park there and camped out, spent the night there. Took a lot of pictures there. The next day we rode up to up Highway 118 up to McDonald Observatory and toured that area. Then we rode on out towards Kent a little ways to the Y there of 166, 118, and took the loop back to Fort Davis coming around this way. And then we caught Highway 17 again going on down, and that's also runs into Highway 67 there at Marfa. We stopped at Marfa and ate lunch at the city park. Then we rode Highway 67 on down to Presidio, and then caught the River Road, which is Farm Market or Ranch Road 170, down to Terlingua, Lajitas, Terlingua, Studi Butte, and then we went up to the Chisos Mountains there, right where the Big Bend National Park sign is, and camped out there up in the basin elevation, 6,000 or 7,000 feet elevation there. And then the next day we rode back down to the headquarters there at the intersection there in the highway called Panther Junction. Rode down to Boquillas Canyon, Rio Grande Village area, and we went across on little flat bottom boats or ferries, boats, John boats, whatever you want to call them, to the town of Boquillas del Carmen in Mexico there, and had lunch over there. It was a sort of strange, we all ordered different things in different quantities. We all got soda water to drink, and everybody's bill came to exactly $3.50. I think everything was $3.50. And then we came back across the river, went down to Boquillas Canyon, and walked down there to the sand dune, and checked out the river there. Then late that afternoon, which was Monday afternoon, we rode back up to Big Bend headquarters, on back up to the Chisos Mountains. Nathan and I packed up our gear, and we hightailed it back out of the park up 385 to Marathon, over to Sanderson on 90 to Dryden. Stopped and picked up some stuff to make some foil burgers. Stopped by Langtree to see Judge Roy Bean, but he wasn't there anymore. So went on down to and camped out at the Seminole Canyon State Park there. The next day, which was Tuesday, it was sort of woke up sort of drizzly rain, cold. We rode on down to Del Rio, ate breakfast, went out to Brackettville on Highway 90 still, and then Nathan and I went north on Ranch Road 674, which is a very scenic road that follows the West Nueces River. A lot of elevation changes and curves and pretty scenery. Rode up to Rock Springs, caught 377 there, and followed it down along the Llano River to Junction, ate lunch at Junction, and it was a little chilly and threatening rain, so we wound up putting on our rain suits, came on up to Mason, caught 29 over to Llano to Burnett, caught 281 up to Lampasas, and 580 back over to Gatesville, and came on back into McGregor and China Spring. Got home about 4 o'clock. Bill and Bobby and them had off the whole week, so they didn't leave Big Bend until Tuesday morning, but it was cold and rainy when they did that, and so they were planning to go to Padre Island, so they headed down to Eagle Pass, and I think maybe spent the night there. And it looked like the weather forecast was going to be rainy, so they somehow or another, I don't know exactly the route they took, but they wound up at Inks Lake State Park up by Burnett, and for the next night. And the weather looked like it was going to clear off, so they wound up going to San Antonio and on down to Aransas Pass or Port Aransas, and spent the night camped out on the beach, I believe, at Mustang Island. And then the next day or two, they came on back maybe through San Antonio and back up to Waco. And they got home Friday, I think, Friday afternoon. Anyway, that's sort of a brief recap of our trip. Hope you enjoy the pictures and the narration. These are the still pictures that Nathan and I took with the 35 millimeter. As I mentioned earlier, we had problems with our little 110 camera, and none of the 2 or 3 dozen pictures that we had taken on the way down to Fort Davis came out. So the first pictures pick up while we are at Fort Davis State Park. This was Saturday afternoon, probably about 6 o'clock or so. We had driven 500 miles that day, and it was still a little bit daylight, so the boys had been trapped on the back of the bikes nearly all day, so they were feeling a little adventurous, and there was this mountainside there, so they took off on this trail climbing up to the top of the mountain. and they got up to the top, and they were hollering down at us, but we weren't answering them. And Luke just turned to the other guys and said, in just a talking voice, it sounded like, said, "I don't think they can hear us," but we heard everything just crystal clearly. So anyway, they had a little excursion there while Bobby and Bill and I cooked supper and unpacked our stuff and set up camp. So that was the first of our pictures. This is at Fort Davis State Park. Bobby had his 35mm camera out with a big zoom on. Never did see his pictures that I remember, but may still have them. He was taking the picture of the boys up the mountainside too. You get an idea of the our bikes. Bobby and Luke were on the 500 Silverwing. Bill and Kevin were on 1100 Goldwing, and Nathan and I were on a 1200 Goldwing. And Bill was pulling a little two-wheel trailer that the guys out at and he out at the boys' ranch at the Methodist home had built, and made a little canvas cover to go over it, or a vinyl cover to cover it all up. Worked out pretty good, except it wasn't raccoon proof. This is a picture of Nathan inside our tent later that afternoon, or the next morning maybe. We were in a one-man pup tent. We're a little bit crowded. Here's a picture of our campsite. Motorcycles and Bill sitting at the table over there, relaxing. May have been drinking coffee after the breakfast we had. And there's Bobby in the forefront there. I didn't notice him until just now. We had a little problems with the raccoons the first night, and they wiped nearly all of our groceries out, except for what was locked inside of a ice chest or two. But they got all of our banana bread, or most of our banana bread, and our tortillas and things like that. So, different view there. Luke and Nathan and Kevin were throwing a football around, and got their picture. The boys are around the campfire helping with the wood and stuff, putting them to work. Another picture around the campfire. I must have been standing way up on a rock or something, because looking down at everybody. May have been on the table or something. This is Sunday morning, eating breakfast. I think we had pretty good breakfast, because all the breakfast food was locked up in the ice chest. So I think we probably had cereal or oatmeal and sausage and eggs or something. Boys look a little sleepy. This is a view from our campground, looking back towards the entrance. Sort of dry. This was still middle of March, so it really hadn't greened up very much around there. But it was very pretty anyway. This view is looking back towards the east at the campground and the trees in the park, and there's a road that goes up over the top of that ridge in the distance there, and I believe from there you should be able to see the old Fort Davis and the town of Fort Davis. It's supposed to be very scenic up on top of that ridge. This is a view in the morning, Sunday morning, with the sun shining directly on the mountainside that the boys had climbed up the evening before. And you see what a different color it is. And they had climbed way up there before they reached a point they couldn't go up to the top. So a little different colors in the morning than in the afternoon around there. After breakfast, we loaded up, and I think we went back into Fort Davis, maybe to get gas or maybe some other supplies or something. And then we're heading to the to the east, and looking into the morning sun. You can see the rays of the sunlight on the camera lens there. But Bill and Bobby are in front of Nathan and myself in the picture, already going around the bend. See the trailer there, Bobby and Luke in the lead. I think right along there was a squirrel playing chicken with us too, if I remember right. After we finished our business in Fort Davis, we rode back up 118. We're going to the McDonald Observatory, and as we passed by the entrance to the Fort Davis State Park, there we snapped a picture of that entrance. Here we're going on up from Fort Davis area towards the McDonald Observatory on 118. You can see the bill in front of us there with a white trailer. Very pretty drive, rolling foothills or mountains and nice valleys and ranch land. It's about 18 miles up to McDonald Observatory, and quite a climb. We go from probably 4,000 feet up to 6,800 feet, I think. There was a little Chinook Toyota motorhome trying to climb up the mountainside, and it was just barely making it in front of us. We had to pass him. Still on 118 going towards the McDonald Observatory. I think this is our first view of Mount Locke and the observatories up there on the mountain. It's probably still 5 or 10 miles away at this point. You notice there's several different little telescope domes there and other buildings. We're getting closer. There's Bill and Bobby and the boys in front of us, and Nathan and I were taking the pictures Nathan was, and you can see the observatories a little bit clearer up on Mount Locke there. We were really enjoying the ride at this time. At the foot of Mount Locke, there's a visitor center, really nice, brand new at that time, and it had a lot of interesting information. And what we're standing in front of, those two circular, look like great big donut figures there, that's the size of the telescope. One is a 82 inch and the other is a 107, and you can see Bobby was taking this picture so you can see the rest of us in front of that replica of the larger mirror that's there. Everybody sure looks young back there. After spending some time at the visitor center, we drove on up the mountain top to the mountaintop, Mount Locke, which is 6,825 feet elevation or something like that. There's a sign there saying that's the highest state paved road in Texas, 6,800 feet. And the view from there is spectacular. You can see all the way back down to Fort Davis, 20 miles away or so. And even though it was a little hazy this morning, we could still see a long ways. They say on a clear day you can see all the way to Presidio and Big Bend area. There, I believe, is Nathan looking through one of the telescopes that they have up there, or huge binoculars. There's a close-up of Nathan looking through the telescope. By the way, when I parked my Gold Wing on an incline, leaning down the incline with the extra battery in the left saddlebag, and Nathan's still on the back of the bike, as I got off on the right side, the bike just sort of lifted the front end off the ground and rolled over, fell into the side of a pickup. Luckily didn't hurt anything. It was sort of all slow motion, but nobody was hurt and no damage done, luckily. But learned a lesson about lean angles. Here's a view looking back down. You can see 118 snaking its way through the valley there back towards Fort Davis off to the left, and you see the mountains in the distance. Very pretty. I believe this is a picture of the larger observatory with Nathan standing in front of it. It's probably 50 to 75 feet tall, huge. And the whole dome rotates so they can, including the telescope device, rotates so they can focus in on a particular star or constellation or whatever they want to be looking at. Another picture of Nathan leaning on the rail. I think he's got some binoculars around his neck. You can see the view in the background. Don't know who this wild-haired man looking guy is. Grizzly Adams or somebody. Had hair, and my hair had color back then. And really enjoying the ride, the trip. This is a view from inside the big telescope, looking at the bottom of the telescope and looking up into the dome. Massive device. I forgot now how many tons it weighs, but it's humongous. And their lights were shining off of it big time. We didn't get to actually take the tour. This is a little bit better view from the bottom end of the telescope. This is the 107-inch diameter mirror that we were standing in front of the 107 replica down at the Visitor Center. This is the larger of the two. This shows a little view of the opening in the dome that they open up at night so they can peer out at the universe. This is the smaller, the 82-inch telescope. We couldn't go in that. They didn't have it open to where you could tour it or even see inside hardly. But got Luke in the shadow there taking my picture, and Kevin and Nathan back in the doorway there. Nice pine trees up there too. Not real big, but nice to see pine trees in the desert. We're back down at the Visitor Center, and there was this sort of a cone-shaped little rock mountain out there. Looks sort of like a pyramid, but it's probably round. But sort of a unusual formation there in the middle of all these round mountains there. Here's a view of the Visitor Center. I think they have enlarged this considerably since we were there in '87, but you can see Nathan kneeling down, Bobby standing in the doorway facing the camera, and Bill and Kevin going in all at the same time. And you can also see Mount Locke in the background with the observatories up there. outside the visitor center there, they were putting on a little demonstration showing sunspots, and it was looking through the telescope and having this paper card right there. I don't think you can actually see it, but we could, when we were standing there, see some little sunspots on there. Pretty interesting presentation that they did there. Went on up Highway 18, climbed up into the mountains a little bit further. Real crooked, scenic, curvy road. And then we were headed towards Kent, but we didn't go all the way to I-10 at Kent. We turned and went back to the south on the Fort Davis Loop on 166. Pretty road, nice riding. We're still on 118, headed sort of northwest towards Kent, and down in the lower area there you can see the road where it continues on, and the other road turns off to the south there that we take. Anyway, that's 118 is a pretty scenic road going down between the mountains on the way down to Kent. We're headed south now on Highway 166, and it's pretty jagged looking, like volcanic type formations of rocks protruding up out of the normal looking mountains. And in some of the areas we thought we could see some of those cavities up there that were sheltered from the sun way up at the high altitude. We thought we could see a little patch of snow every once in a while. Anyway, this was a really pretty drive or road around this way too. Some more views on Highway 166. On this loop we did see some antelope, a little herd of antelope out in the field past the fence line there, and they were just grazing like cattle. There's another one of those volcanic rock looking formations, and looks like we can see some snow off to the left right there and up in the shadows up in there. Pretty rugged country. Very dry though. I think this is on the southern leg of the loop headed back towards Fort Davis. Along in here we saw a bunch of Border Patrol people and a helicopter and stuff, like they were making a roundup. And they do surveillance on this whole area out there because it's so desolate, and a lot of illegal aliens coming over through this area. This is further to the east on 166, going back towards Fort Davis. Still on 166, we finally came across a sign that said Fort Davis 20 miles, Marfa 37. 166 comes in to Highway 67 or 17 right there, 3 or 4 miles south of Fort Davis, so it's halfway or partially between the two towns. This was a pretty good sized peak that we were passing by, and you notice the clouds, shadows on the peak there. Don't know the name of the peak though. Here's the picture with the antelopes in there, just right on the other side of the fence there. Probably a dozen or two of them out there, and a pretty peak off in the distance. Anyway, we made our way on down to Marfa, and I think we probably went and got some soda water or something. We came back to the park downtown, which is really a pretty park. Big, tall cottonwood trees, and I think they were cottonwood trees, and green area, picnic tables, park benches and stuff. Anyways, we had our picnic lunch right there, real close to the beautiful courthouse there. You see us sitting over there, taking it easy. It was a beautiful day. You got a good view of my 1200 Goldwing Interstate, real dark blue, with a bad alternator and a battery in the left saddlebag. After Marfa, we went on down Highway 67 to Presidio. It's about 60 miles or so, and we're going down and down and down and through some beautiful, curvy, winding roads, drop in elevation, and some interesting rock formations like the Abraham Lincoln profile and the Elephant Rock, which looks like an elephant standing out there in the on the hillside, probably 100 feet tall. Really looks like an elephant. This is Highway 67 going on down towards Shafter and Presidio. And this is the town of Shafter, the ghost town. It used to be a silver mining town, I think. Now the only thing there is some ranches and this old church, and there's a few dirt roads and a few people. When we got to Presidio, we turned southeast on the what everybody calls the River Road. It's Ranch Road number 170, which goes from Presidio to Studi Butte and follows the Rio Grande River on your right when you're going east. And they had had some snow and rain, and the bluebonnets and the yucca plants were in bloom. Just the smell was overwhelming and so pretty, and the bluebonnets there are about knee high, and the yucca plants are so pretty, yellow, all bloomed out, and cactus stuff. I've never seen it that pretty in all the other trips after that year that I've gone down to Big Bend, or up to Big Bend. We had changed bikes around, and I think Nathan and I were riding Bobby's GL 500 Silverwing, and there I have my silver helmet in the way of the picture, but Nathan is taking some pretty neat pictures here over my shoulder going down 170 towards Lajitas, and you can see either the Mexican mountains, Sierra del Carmen, or the Chisos Mountains there in the distance. Roadside shot of mountains and mesas, flat top mountains around as we were passing through on 170. And as I mentioned earlier, we were following right along beside the Rio Grande, and it was really muddy and seemed to be flowing pretty good at this time. So we got a few pictures of the Rio Grande to show you after this. Nathan had turned around and took a picture of Bill and Kevin coming on his 1100 Goldwing with the trailer in tow. Or it may have been Bobby and Luke. Can't tell for sure. But we had traded bikes, swapped off bikes, riding for a while on this road. We're still on Highway 170. And that is Bill on his bike with the trailer, and Bobby's riding my 1200, and Luke and Nathan and I are on the 500. But this is on the western end of the 170, where all the road dips are, whoop-de-whoops. And this area is real prone to javelina and burros at night now. Another good view of the Rio Grande flowing making its way to the Gulf of Mexico. Picture was a little bit fuzzy, but you still get the idea of how pretty it is. You see the mountains in the background over in Mexico. Another view of the mountains just across the river in Mexico. They seem to be a lot higher than they are on the Texas side. Nathan took this picture from the top of the hill, 15% or 15-degree grade. You go up to the top and just right back down, follow the curvy road around. Just around the corner is where the teepees are. The 3 teepees in the roadside park right beside the river. You can see the Rio Grande Valley off in the distance. Another shot of the Rio Grande River. One thing the pictures don't really do justice to is just how green all the trees were that were along the rivers, and how pretty the flowers were, and how fragrant the aroma, the smell of the flowers was. Just really got your attention. We stopped at Lajitas at the old trading post, which has quite a history to it, and went inside, got soda water and maybe candy bar or something, came back out and stood around. And I don't think they had the brush arbor at that time, but this building off to the left is the old trading post. It's now the Golf Pro Center, but they still have the painting up on the wall, the mural of the cattle drive scenes with the longhorns and the cowboys and the horses and the river and everything. Anyway, I think it's still a dirt gravel parking lot, but the gas pumps are gone, and the building that says Baños or bathroom on it, and the brush arbor is gone too. It's getting a little warm at this time. We were all taking our jackets off for sure by this time. It's probably 85 or 90 degrees even in March. Here we are dropping down into the, I think this was at Terlingua Creek, is this valley there, and the mountains off in the distance are the Chisos Mountains, where we're headed to camp out that night. But Highway 170's got some great views all along it there. This is one of the better ones. And I think we're right at the town of Terlingua, right along in here. As a matter of fact, there are some of the old rock ghost houses or huts that are left at the Terlingua ghost town. It wasn't very inhabited back then, but now there's quite a few people moved into the area. They have the chili cook-off down there every year and some bike rallies and things like that, and they have quite a few people showing up, and a lot of homeowners have bought 5 or 10 acres up there, put little trailer houses on them or something. And we're back on 118 again from Studi Butte going into Big Bend National Park. There's the western entrance sign right there. As you can see, it's getting later in the day, so we don't have too much time to dilly-dally. We ran into some road construction on 118 going into the park, probably 3 or 4 miles, but we just took it slow. It didn't stop us. We just had to go real slow because it's loose gravel and stuff. But the mountains you see in the distance are the Chisos Mountains, and you can see the window right there, which looks like it's almost touching the ground, but as I understand it, it's several hundred feet drop off there, and that falls that Nathan and Kevin walked down to at the window that night and back, luckily. Some more views of the mountains as we make our way to the Chisos Mountain Basin. That may be the window right there that we're looking at. Anyway, we made it to the turnoff to go up to the Chisos Mountains Basin, which is a dormant volcano, which they have restaurant and motel up there, lodges. They have a huge camping ground, pretty primitive camping ground though, a lot of rocks. Anyway, there's Bobby and Luke on my gold wing in front of Nathan and me, and Bill must be behind us. This is on the road going up towards the Chisos Mountains, the big sort of square looking mountain peak right over the windshield there. I believe that's called Casa Grande, or I think it's Casa Grande or Emery Peak, one of the two. That's right beside the entrance. This is a 7-mile ride up there to that mountain and over the ridge down the switchbacks to the lodge and the campground and motel and the restaurant. More mountains on the way up to the Chisos Basin. A lot of volcanic formations protruding out of the earthen looking mountainside. Here's some more of the rocks around the rim of the Chisos Basin. Pretty tall peaks around there. I think the tallest peak is about 8,000 feet, 7,000 feet around the Chisos Mountain rim. Still heading on up towards the peak there and the entrance over into the rim, down into the basin. You might notice that we're starting to see some pine trees and other vegetation, and they say there are a lot of deer, mountain lions, bear up in the mountains there. It's a lot cooler up there at the higher elevation. The change in elevation goes from about 3,000 feet or so at the cutoff at the bottom of this road, and you go a little bit over 6,000 feet going over into the rim. So it's a pretty good climb, just a steady incline. A lot of fun to ride, curvy, very scenic. This is a good shot of, I think that's Emery Peak there. That's what it's called. The canyon walls or the walls of the mountains are getting closer and closer to us. We're just sort of winding our way in between them and sort of snaking back and forth up towards the top of the road there. We've made our way over the ridge, the little pass that goes down into the Chisos Basin. This, I believe, is the first of the 2 or 3 switchbacks, 10-mile-an-hour switchbacks, 20-mile-an-hour switchbacks, leading down into the basin. This is one impressive view in person. The rim of the caldera, the old dormant volcano is all around, and then the basin down in the middle is way down below us, where the campground is. What you're looking at in the center of the picture is the window, where all the water in the basin that falls in the basin or snow runs out the window, and it makes a waterfall there. I think it's called Cattail Waterfall, Cattail Falls, if I remember right. Another view of one of the, maybe the same hairpin curve, but I think it may be a different one. It's getting late in the day, so you're seeing a lot more of the colors come alive with the late red afternoon sun. Getting a little bit better view of the valley below. Getting a pretty good view of the rugged rock formation and the spires or chimneys that stick up all around the rim. This area was on the north side of the basin, which will be right across from our campground. This is a great view. Again, I believe this is Emery Peak. After we got our campsite sort of set up, and some people may call this Old Baldy for some reason. Look at all that hair. I think we have a picture somewhere of the moon coming up over this mountain or by this mountain in the clear sky in a morning shot. I'm standing up by our table, campsite. We're looking back down the hill a little ways to where we had to park our bikes in the trailer and haul all of our stuff up the little incline there. But there's Bill in the white shirt, Bobby with no shirt, Kevin, Luke, and Nathan sort of going counterclockwise or clockwise around. This is a late evening shot of the window area, and the sunset in the sky was really pretty from our campsite. By the way, Nathan and Kevin and Luke started out to hike down to the window while Bill and Bobby and I set up camp, fixed supper. Luke turned around and came back, and it's a 2 or 3 mile hike down to the window and then back up the mountain to our campsite. So Kevin and Nathan were probably 8:30 or 9 o'clock before they got back, and I can't remember if they had flashlights with them or not, but they were way past dark getting back to our campsite. So we were all getting a little worried about it. We'd already eaten supper back at the camp because we weren't going to be, Bill said he didn't want to head out on an empty stomach to go searching for 2 lost boys. So they made it back, thank goodness. The next morning, the boys spotted these caves across the little gully there by our campsite, so they climbed over there down into the gully and up the mountainside through the loose rock, tried to get up to the cave area there. Looks like they probably did. Anyway, we had breakfast, packed up, and we're getting ready to head to Boquillas. Here's another view from our campsite of our bike and trailer and the boys way down there in the gully. Almost can't see them. Here's a picture of Casa Grande or Emery Peak the next morning with the bright morning sky sort of highlighting or silhouetting the rock mountain. This is sort of an interesting picture. If you can see, we're headed out of the basin going to Boquillas, and different looking rock colors and things like that, but you see the Sotol cactus off to the left, see the roadway, and there's my shadow and Nathan's shadow taking the picture, looking back down at the window. Nathan did a pretty good job taking some action shots here. Here's another shot leaving the basin. You can see the campground. That's like where our campsite was, right down there. But you can also see the window and see how far off it is. It was also pretty steep and slick right there where the waterfall is, and I understand Nathan almost slipped and fell. We had made it over the ridge and out of the basin. We're going down the Chisos Basin Road, and in the shadow you can see somebody's mirror and tail light right in front of us. Just as pretty in the morning as it is in the afternoon. So another shot going on down the Basin Road back towards the headquarters. I think that's Bobby and Luke in front of us. Red helmet. I think we're heading down towards the basin, and we just go down and down and down for like 25 miles on this long, desolate road. But sort of a mist in the air and all kinds of colors down in the lower areas. It's really a beautiful morning. This is a great shot looking down towards Boquillas Canyon, and you can see the two bikes in front of us. No trailer on today's ride. The itinerary called for us to go down to the Hot Springs area, which used to be sort of a resort town with a hotel, stores, post office, and they had this Hot Springs house right in the edge of the river. You can sort of see the what little bit of the framework is still left intact there, and the boys were going out there to get inside the building area where the hot springs are. The river was flowing pretty good at that time. The water was pretty cold. It was March, like the 17th or 18th, something like that. And so Nathan and Kevin somehow or another got out into the deeper part of the river and were being washed down river a little bit and couldn't seem to stand up or swim to the shore. So we were all fixing to shuck off our boots and some of our clothes and go in to save them, but they finally were able to stand up and walk out. But pretty neat place there, a lot of history. Here's a picture of the, I think this was the post office, I believe is what its sign says, or Hotel One on it, there at the hot springs. Palm trees growing and everything, right on the banks of the river. Going on down Highway 118 towards Boquillas, from Hot Springs, there's this tunnel through this mountainside there, sort of neat, just a straight tunnel through there. Probably 100 yards, 200 yards through there. Anyway, we decided to go to the Boquillas Canyon entrance, and there's a big sand slide there that comes out of a cave, an old mine probably up in the mountainside there. The canyon walls there where the river cuts through are about 1,500 feet high, and there were some kayakers and canoeists coming down through there, and when they got next to the walls, they looked like a little pencil laying on a floor next to an 8-foot wall or 12-foot wall. They were just teeny tiny. But making our way down through the bamboo and the cane, they had cut a sort of a tunnel through all the bamboo and the cane, sugar cane, on the path down there to Boquillas Canyon. Really sort of a neat experience. Here we are at the mouth of Boquillas Canyon, and pictures just don't do it justice. Those walls, those cliffs are just so tall, and the river's probably 75 yards, 50 yards wide here or so, and flowing pretty good, and it goes on down there and just snakes its way through the canyon for 10 or 15 miles or so. Here's a picture of the sand slide. There's Luke sitting, I think that's Luke, or maybe Bobby or somebody sitting at the bottom of the slide, and the boys. I think that's them up there at the top where it goes into the cave. But I think Kevin and Nathan climbed all the way to the top and then tried to run down the steep sand wall there, or slide, and wound up falling and rolling most of the rest of the way down. Anyway, we're going across the river on the flat bottom John boats. I think it cost $1.50 for the big boys and 75 cents a piece for the little boys, is what they told us. And they took us across, and then they had burros across there that you could rent and ride onto to town about a half a mile, 3/4 of a mile, but they only had like 2 of them there, and there was 6 of us, so we just decided to walk and save our money and get a little exercise too. But we walked up to the town of Boquillas del Carmen and had lunch there. This is up in the town there at the little restaurant. We were sitting at the table. They had like 20-ounce Coca-Colas or Pepsi-Colas or something like that to drink, and then of course the usual tortillas or chalupas or tacos or something like that, enchiladas. And there's Bill with his back turned to us. Anyway, we had lunch there, walked on back, and then to the river, took the ride back across, and then rode back to our camp. And Nathan and I went on back to Seminole Canyon for the night, and then back to Waco the next day. And I mentioned earlier, Bobby and Luke and the boys wound up going all the way down to Corpus Christi to Mustang Island, camping out there on the island, and stretched their week out until Friday afternoon, I think. Nathan and I got home Tuesday afternoon. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the pictures. I wish we had movies of this, but this is all we had back then. So, hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.